Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 293, Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland just ended, and this is going to be my post-fight recap for the main event. I'll be doing a full card post-fight as well. I'll link that down in the description as soon as that's done. But Sean Strickland is your new undisputed UFC middleweight champion, and he went out there and he won it clear as day, 49-46, and I agreed with the scorecards, and he's your new middleweight champion. And talk about throwing the division on its head. Nobody expected this. Strickland took the fight on relative short notice, and he went out there and won very clearly, very uncontroversially. He beats Israel Adesanya by decision, and not only that, he outstrikes Israel Adesanya to a decision. Now, I talked about it in the lead up to this fight. We'll discuss it more a little bit later in the video, but you never know when one of the great champions, they're going to go out there and they're going to get knocked out. They're going to lose a decision, and they're just never going to be the same again. They're never going to be the force or the level that they once were. I talked about that extensively in the lead up to this fight, and I've talked about it many a times with other greats like Alexander Volkanovski. We have to appreciate these guys while they are around, because you never know. At the drop of a hat, at a snap of a finger, all of a sudden, they've lost, and now we never see them return to the great form they once were. Now, maybe that's the story for Israel Adesanya, maybe not. But Sean Strickland has to be one of the most underrated fighters in UFC history. And I underrated him going into this fight, but I just knew on the feet, I just didn't see past the victory. And I thought, okay, if Strickland wins, he has to grapple, but I don't think he's going to grapple. And even if he does grapple, Israel Adesanya has amazing takedown defense. He went out there for literally 5 rounds and struck with Israel Adesanya. I don't think he shot in on one takedown. He grabbed Israel Adesanya's leg off some body kicks a couple times, but that was pretty much it. The first round, most exciting round of the entire fight, Israel Adesanya backing up against the fence, kind of moving laterally side to side, kind of looking for counters. Strickland catches him with a 1-2, right hand, right on the chin, drops Israel Adesanya badly. I really thought it might be over right there. Starts swarming him on the ground, landing nasty ground and pound shots. Adesanya kind of works his way back to his feet. And you have a Strickland versus Brendan Allen-esque ground and pound, I guess you want to call that, or just clinch strikes as Adesanya is working his way up against the fence. And he's just smashing him. And Adesanya's blocking some of them. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, one of these lands clean and it's going to hurt him again. And then it's just going to be the beginning of the end. Adesanya even takes a moment while he's getting smashed. It reminded me of Darren Till versus Dricus du Plessis. Took a moment to give the referee a thumbs up. He survived the onslaught. He continued to circle. And I wonder, is he okay? Is he still rocked? And it looked like he was moving okay and he was circling around. But Sean Strickland just plotting forward. And he was checking kicks, which we don't really see from Strickland, usually getting his lead leg brutalized. He's checking kicks. He's moving forward. He's pumping the jab. Not a whole lot else happens in that first round, but, I mean, that was insanity. And that was midway through, I believe, in the first round. Second round was the only round that I scored for Israel Adesanya. Razor close round, to be honest. Strickland still pressing. Adesanya looking for counters, but not really finding a whole lot. Landed a couple body kicks. Landed a couple leg kicks where Strickland would lift up the leg, but the kick would still land with some impact. And I just thought Adesanya landed a little bit harder shots in that second round. I gave him the second round 10-9. I know some people were suggesting the first round could have been a 10-8 for Strickland. I didn't think it was a 10-8. Third round was really, really close. It was really uneventful. Not a whole lot landed clean in the third round. It was just more of Strickland walking Israel Adesanya down. Adesanya throwing shots that really weren't landing. And in the third round, I thought, okay, maybe the judges could give that either way. But even if you want to say maybe it was even on the feet, then you have to go to another scoring criteria, and that's octagon control and octagon aggression. And Strickland was clearly pressing forward, and I thought maybe Strickland had a slight edge in strikes. Both guys were very hard to hit in this fight. There wasn't a whole lot of really clean shots landed in this fight. Mainly by Israel Adesanya. Strickland had a couple moments. Obviously, in the first round, landed a lot of clean shots. But the fight was really just Strickland walking forward, throwing a lot of shots, landing a couple jabs, and neither guy was really landing super cleanly. Third round I gave to Strickland. Fourth round was very similar to the third round. Strickland just cutting him off, walking him down, throwing jabs. I think this was the round where he landed one really good left hand kind of to the neck area of Adesanya, and I think it might have clipped the jaw as well. And then you have the fifth round. More of the same. Adesanya circling, getting backed up against the fence. Strickland getting off a little bit. landing some jabs, snapping his head back a bit. And then the end of the fifth round I thought was pretty close as well. The end of the fifth round, Strickland just starts rushing forward to him, just screaming out loud, kind of leaving his hands low. And I'm like, Strickland, you just won this decision. If you get brutally KO'd in the last 15 seconds because you're dropping your hands and screaming at the top of your lungs, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. But Strickland walks him down. Adesanya really doesn't throw anything back. And I gave Strickland the fifth round as well. So I had 1 as well as 3, 4, and 5 for Strickland. I was a little bit worried going into the scorecards, and I know somebody's going to call me crazy, but with judging nowadays, you worry, and when I saw the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, I thought it was Strickland, and I thought it was rather clear for Strickland, but I thought it was within the margin of error, especially for some of these MMA judges. I mean, the judging is horrific, so I was a little bit worried going into the scorecards. But thank God the judges got it right. I believe all 3 of them had it 49-46, which I thought was a perfect scorecard. 1, 3, 4, and 5 go to Sean Strickland. And what a performance. I'm going to talk about what I thought may have happened with Israel Adesanya in this fight. But we have to give these guys, we have to give them credit for performances like this. Israel Adesanya is one of the greatest middleweights of all time. Israel Adesanya is one of the best strikers in the UFC. And Sean Strickland came in off an unranked win, and he went out there and just 49-46 Israel Adesanya to take his middleweight title. And he didn't wrestle. We know nothing about MMA. We know absolutely nothing about MMA. And on top of that, he flew all the way to Australia. He took the fight on 6 weeks' notice. There was some debate whether or not he would even get the fight because could he get out of the country? Could he get into Australia? And he pulls it off. And the way he fought, I know people are going to say, and I thought he should have tried to grapple, at least to mix it in, especially with some of the striking exchanges. I thought, if he mixes in the grappling, he's really going to start winning this because now Adesanya is going to have grappling to think about. But the game plan of Strickland was executed perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. Because he was super hard to hit like he usually is. And on top of that, he actually checked leg kicks. And when Adesanya would land the body kick, Strickland would react to it by catching the kick and kind of backing Adesanya up with that. He would back Adesanya up to the fence. And when you got your back against the fence, you only have 2 ways to go instead of 4 ways. You can't go forward or you can go forward. So I guess you have 3 ways to go, but you can't go backwards. So the range is easily findable for the guy who's doing the pressuring. And Adesanya in this fight just felt like he was stuck in neutral. Just felt like he was just content backing up, looking for a big shot. And I wonder, going into this fight, did Israel Adesanya think, did he underestimate Sean Strickland? Did he think, I'm going to find that counter shot and I'm going to KO him? It doesn't matter what's happening in these long, drawn-out situations in the rounds where Strickland's just pressing forward. Did Adesanya think he was going to find that KO shot? That's what it felt like. It felt like he was backing up, waiting for the perfect counter. But when you back up against the fence and you can't go backwards, they're going to be able to find the range on you. And Strickland found that jab. He found that right hand in the first round. And he went out there, cut off the cage well. This is going to sound like a crazy comparison, but in a way, in this fight, he reminded me of prime Chris Weidman in the way Chris Weidman would cut off the cage. Instead of following the fighter who's trying to be elusive with their footwork, he would just cut him off and just constantly just immediately cut him off as they started to circle out. And Adesanya just really had nowhere to go. And then his kicks weren't working. His kicks were getting checked. I mean, he landed some kicks, but for the most part, Strickland was checking them or lifting up the leg where he was taking minimal impact. The body kicks weren't landing that much. And then the head kicks, Strickland was blocking them heavily with both arms. So Strickland, people make fun of that stance, that iCarly stance that everyone memes about. But he went out there, I mean, picture perfect game plan. Picture perfect. Wasn't getting chewed up by the legs. Was just pressuring Adesanya, but wasn't pressuring him too much. Alex Pereira pressures, but was getting way too aggressive. And he did that many of times and paid for it against Israel Adesanya, especially at UFC 287 earlier this year. Strickland was pressing him enough. He would get him up against the fence, and he would get off with a couple combinations. And then Adesanya would circle out, and Strickland would just cut him off right away and get right back to throwing some of those combinations. And Adesanya just didn't have an answer for it. What a phenomenal performance by Sean Strickland. And to get it done in this capacity, primarily on the feet, with no controversy. I mean, there's not like an injury in the first round. I mean, there could be an injury. We'll talk about that in a minute. But to get it done the way he got it done is so impressive. It is so impressive that he was able to go out there and outstrike Israel Adesanya, who I consider probably the best striker in the UFC. So does that mean, I guess that means Sean Strickland's the best striker, because it's not like the threat of the grappling made him win the striking exchanges. And, you know, I will talk about maybe Adesanya, maybe something was going on in this fight, which he's going to eat his words if he even mentions. But Strickland went out there and put on a world-class performance. He went out there and put on a world-class performance. He rocked Israel Adesanya in the first round, and then he went on to win not the rest of the rounds, but went on to win the third, fourth, and fifth round. And honestly, I wouldn't cry if the second round was given to Strickland. Now, I thought it was Adesanya's, but I wouldn't cry if it was a 50-45. I wouldn't say that was egregious. The second round was close. There was not a whole lot of clean shots landing. And Strickland went out there and got it done. Nobody expected him to win. Nobody picked him to win. And he had the deck stacked against him. You have to give him credit for that. Because to go into Australia, to fly halfway across the world, to take the fight on 5-6 weeks notice, and to get it done in the way that he got it done is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And this is a moment in time, and I talked about it earlier in the video, and I've been talking about it extensively, really all this year. You have special fighters, and you never know when they're going to have their fall from grace. Israel Adesanya is a very special fighter. He's one of the greatest middleweights of all time. And I talked about it leading into this fight. Could Sean Strickland be the guy to start that decline? I don't know if that's the case. Adesanya's up and getting to his mid-30s, going to his late 30s. You never know. In this sport, the old perpetually get eaten by the young. But this could be that moment in time. We have to appreciate these guys while they're on the top of their game, because you don't know when it's going to be that Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva moment. You don't know when it's going to be that Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya moment. Now, we'll have to see how Adesanya rebounds from this, but you never know when it's going to happen. So you have to appreciate these special fighters at special moments in time, because, you know, I've been watching this sport for 13 years. And back in the day, I just didn't realize, like when I was watching Anderson Silva, he's one of my favorite fighters. I didn't realize, you know, it happens at the drop of a hat. It happens at a snap of a finger. And this could have very well happened to Israel Adesanya tonight. And we have to give him massive credit for Sean Strickland for going out there with an amazing game plan and getting it done in Israel Adesanya's realm. If I told you yesterday, oh, the entirety of the 25 minutes is going to be spent striking, you say, oh, Adesanya clearly wins. You wouldn't have said, oh, Strickland wins 4 out of 5 rounds. Nobody predicted that. Nobody guessed that. And it was just crazy to see. It was absolutely crazy to see. Watching the fight live was an amazing fight. And I talked about this on stream, and some people got upset about it, because this was the greatest fight, but at the same time, it was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. And we're going to talk about that, and people are probably going to cry in the comments. Watching this live was unbelievable because of the unexpected result. But overall, outside of the first round, this was not a great fight. I enjoyed watching it live. It was excellent. It was excellent live. But going back, this isn't going to be a fight you want to go back and rewatch. It's just not going to be. The second through fifth round were not particularly entertaining from an action standpoint. There wasn't a whole lot of clean strikes landed. You know, Adesanya, the entire fight, I think he landed like one good right hand. Didn't land a whole lot with the punches. Had a couple body kicks, a couple leg kicks. But Strickland had that one big flurry in the first round. And then outside of that, it was really some jabs. He landed, I think, maybe 2 or 3 hard left hands. But the fight was more of just the footwork battle. It was Adesanya trying to circle out. It was Strickland cutting him off. And Strickland landed some combinations. You had occasional like right hand to the body from Adesanya. You had Adesanya kind of switching stances. But he couldn't find the range. Sean Strickland looked unhittable in this fight. He looked unhittable in this fight. And I know there's a lot of speculation about, was Israel Adesanya injured going into this fight? I think there's a chance. I think he looked completely off. But you never know when it's a moment in time where maybe Strickland just really looked on. Maybe he was perfect tonight. And maybe Adesanya had an off night. And that's what happens when one fighter has an off night and one fighter has the best night of their life. And I'm not saying that's necessarily this instant, but I will say I don't think Adesanya looked like the normal Adesanya we see. It's just there was no pressure from him. When he did move forward in this fight, he had some moments, but he barely, 25 minutes, I would say maybe he moved forward for 45 seconds. When he moved forward, he had some moments, but he was just unwilling to move forward. He just continued to circle, and even at the end of the fight, he had to know he was losing. He didn't go for it at all. He knew he was losing his belt. He didn't go for it at all. So I don't know if there's an injury. I don't know if he was sick today. I don't know what it was. But that's not to delegitimize. That's not to take anything away from Sean Strickland, because this was a great performance. But I just have to say what I saw. And I saw an Adesanya. That's not the same Adesanya I saw at 287. That's not the same Adesanya I saw at 281 against Pereira both times. That's not even the same Adesanya we saw against Jarrett Cannonier, because in my opinion, the Adesanya we saw tonight, and maybe that's the new Adesanya. Maybe he's fallen off a bit. Maybe he's taken so much damage from Alex Pereira in the first fight in MMA. Maybe he's just slowed down. Maybe he took Sean Strickland a little bit too easy. Maybe he thought, oh, this is an easy win. There's a chance of that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because the best man won tonight. At UFC 293, Sean Strickland was the better fighter. He deserves to hold the middleweight belt. But we can't ignore that Israel Adesanya looked a bit off. He looked a bit off. There was no pressure. There was no urgency. The cardio didn't even look good. Sean Strickland's cardio is unbelievable. He did not even look slightly phased in the 5th round. Adesanya, that's the first time I've seen Adesanya look tired. I think that's the first time. I'm trying to think back. I don't ever remember seeing Adesanya look tired except the Kelvin Gastelum fight. And think about the output from that fight. So for Strickland to do this is so impressive. And again, I don't want to sit here and try to make excuses for Adesanya, but we have to, at least I have to, be honest about what I saw. And I saw an Adesanya that looked different. And maybe MMA just makes no sense. Maybe we just don't know anything about MMA. Everything we thought we knew, we could throw out the window. Just pick anybody whose name is Sean. I'm just picking for now on. I should have picked Sean O'Malley. Should have picked Sean Strickland. But Adesanya did look a bit off tonight. And maybe this is his decline. Maybe fighting and being too active has finally caught up to him. And that's what I referenced earlier about him eating his words. Him and his coach said Dricus should have took the opportunity even though his foot was injured. And I really, honestly, I think they were right on that now. But maybe Adesanya being too active. Maybe he came in a little bit injured. Maybe because UFC 293 wasn't the best card on paper, maybe Adesanya was like, oh, I'm not pulling out. I can't pull out. Could you imagine the level of scrutiny he would have gotten if he would have pulled out of this fight card after what he said about Dricus? And again, that's not to excuse him. I'm just talking about all these different scenarios because they're interesting. And maybe if Dricus would, the Adesanya that showed up tonight, I think Dricus du Plessis beats. But I don't know if that's the new Adesanya or there's something more behind it and there's more to the story. I don't think we're ever going to find out. Because if he comes out with an excuse, he's going to be crucified, and rightfully so. But Sean Strickland, unbelievable performance. And this leaves the question, and maybe I'll make a dedicated video on this. What is next? Because I think a lot of people are going to say, Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. And I think that fight makes perfect sense. I think it makes perfect sense. I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't think it's going to happen. I saw a clip of Dana White talking about, this is why you got to seize your opportunities. And that was a jab at Dricus du Plessis. The UFC takes it out on fighters when they turn down fights. It doesn't matter what the reasoning is. They take it out on fighters. So ultimately, what do I think should happen in a meritocracy? I think it should be Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis for the title. Now, in terms of an immediate rematch for Israel Adesanya, do I think he deserves it? Yes and no. That's not the fight I want to see next. I want to see Adesanya take some time off. But at the end of the day, because of what he's done in the sport, because of what he's done in the UFC, and because he's been so active, and because he has title defense after title defense racked up, and I know technically with this belt, he never defended it once, I could see him sitting out for a while and fight the winner of Strickland versus du Plessis. Get healthy, whatever it may be. He didn't take a whole lot of damage tonight, but he took some damage. Take some time off for a change. Come back and then maybe fight the winner of Strickland versus du Plessis. Or you could do Adesanya versus maybe Cannonier, maybe Vettori trilogy. I don't know what you would do with Adesanya if you don't give him a title shot. But I don't think to give Israel Adesanya an immediate rematch is completely unwarranted. But for me, it's not about whether or not he should get a rematch because of his resume in the sport, what he's done in the UFC. It's more of how the fight played out. He really had no offense. He really didn't do much in this fight. So how can we sit here and say, oh, he definitely deserves a title shot? I've talked about it many of times. Oh, I saw all I needed to see here. I know who's the better fighter. Tonight, the way Adesanya fought, let's say that was 100% healthy Adesanya. He wasn't sick today or something like that. And, at the end of the day, I want to hear an excuse, but I know he's going to get crucified for it if he does, which rightfully so again. But if that's the Adesanya we're going to see in the next fight, I'm picking Sean Strickland. I don't even know who I would pick in a rematch. I would probably have to pick Strickland. I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough. But I think what they should do is Do Strickland versus Duplessis. Duplessis has earned a shot. Duplessis TKO'd Robert Whittaker. Let Adesanya take some time off. He can return, either fight a contender and get a title shot, or maybe walk into an immediate title shot. If Duplessis is the champion, they still have that storyline there. I think that fight would be even more interesting if Duplessis is the champion. But I really think the rightful thing to do is most likely Strickland versus Duplessis. That's what I would do if I was in control of the UFC. I don't think that's going to happen. And not only do I not think that's going to happen, I think that's third on the list of things that's going to happen. My best guess is, and again, this is just what I think the UFC is going to do. I think you will see Strickland versus Israel Adesanya too. I think that's the fight that will happen next. I don't know when it'll be. It'll probably be UFC 300. I think that'll probably be the main event. I think if you don't see Adesanya get an immediate rematch, if Khamzat beats Paulo Costa, then I think you will see Sean Strickland versus Khamzat Chimaev. I think that will be the next title defense if they don't want to give Adesanya an immediate rematch. But ultimately, I think Duplessis should get it. I really do. And I've picked against Duplessis in pretty much every fight in his UFC career, at least all the notable ones. And I'd probably pick Strickland. And again, I might make a video about what's next for Sean Strickland or something along those lines. But what a performance by Sean Strickland. I'm still trying to digest it. I'm probably going to go back and rewatch it just to really, without the anxiety of, holy shit, what's going on here? Because what makes some of these fights and what makes this the greatest sport in the world, again, I said this fight wasn't all that great. But what made it so great was the unexpected nature of it. That made this fight so great. I was on the edge of my feet, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time because of the unexpected performance of Sean Strickland. One of the best championship performances I have ever seen. And he's the new middleweight champion. We know nothing about the sport. We know absolutely nothing about the sport. Sean Strickland's your UFC middleweight champion. Israel Adesanya loses his belt twice in a 12-month period. And I know people are going to say 1-3 in his last 3 fights, or 1-2 in his last 3 fights. But, you know, I do understand the longevity of him being around, him reigning as a champion, him having title defenses, and maybe getting that immediate rematch. But that is not what I personally want to see. What an incredible night. I'll have to do my full card recap after this. Sean Strickland is your new middleweight champion. Who would have predicted that? I think like 93% or something were picking Israel Adesanya on Tapology. I really didn't see this coming. I knew fighters can fall off. I know fighters, long-time reigning champions and dominant champions can fall off. And we've seen it so many times before. And if you go back and watch my prediction video for this fight, I talked about Weidman and Anderson Silva. Nobody gave Weidman a chance. No one gave Strickland a chance. It happens all the time. And it's why I love this sport. And it happened again tonight for Sean Strickland. He is your new UFC middleweight champion. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of the fight. Let me know who you want to see Sean Strickland fight next. That is the answer I truly want down in the comments. I'm curious, trying to gauge either Dricus Duplessis, Khamzat Chimaev with the win over Paulo Costa, or Israel Adesanya immediate rematch. Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.